Oh, it's so fired up. Does not begin to say what's about to happen here to the 14-year-old me. That's Jon Brennan, Real World Season 2, Los Angeles, musician, podcaster, so much more. Jon, I've been almost waiting my whole life to say these two words to you. And I know you know them without even us talking about it. True story.
Yeah.
Because I've been saying that since 1993. Here's the problem with us getting older. Year by year goes by, people remember that reference less, but it still matters to me, Jon Brennan.
You know, I saw a clip not very long ago where Dave Grohl they had made a little skit with his band members. I guess it was before Nirvana, even. I think, I'm not sure when it was, but it was a young Dave Grohl doing True Story.
That is so.
And
so
Beth
wild.
used to work for Axl Rose, and it was actually during the time that we were on the Real World, and he found out she was on there, and he started watching it, and he started, every time he saw her, he'd go, Beth, True Story.
That's
crazy, right?
It's incredible, the reach and how much. So I got to ask you first and foremost, and I'm sure you get it all the time. Is it literally every single day that you walk this earth, somebody comes up and is like, Jon, LA Season 2? True
Not
story?
Not anymore. And there's very little in between. People will just walk up to me and go, do you know who you are? Oh my gosh. And then, I couldn't talk them out of it. Or it'll come up in conversation. I'll say, yeah, so I did this crazy thing 30 years ago. I was on the first reality TV show. Yeah. In fact, I had the cowboy hat, and I was, lived in this house together and fussed and fought. And and they're like, no, never heard of it. So there's not much in between. It's, I do have days now that it doesn't happen, but it's been 32 years. So, it used to be multiple times a day, and then it's gotten less and less to where it's, a couple times a week.
Well, I know I'm getting older, when my podcast audience is continuously not recognizing my early 90s references. But if you think that stops me, Jon, it doesn't.
No.
All right.
It's ingrained. It's ingrained in you.
All right. Well, how often do you get this trope? Meaning me, average suburban kid. I think I was 14 when your season came out, about to turn 15, 1993. MTV is a large part of my life. I feel like my town, which looking back isn't that much of a small town. I come from an industrial town in Connecticut, but everyone's small town, if you're not in a city, feels like a middle of nowhere. I looked at what you guys were doing with the Real World, eventually Road Rules, as some level of an escape. I didn't think I'd be able to make it through college. I didn't know if I had a discernible skill, but I'm like, these guys have somehow figured out a way to get on TV being their exact selves. So to me, Jon Brennan, like, you're still this huge celebrity that was a part of my life for like most of the 90s. Does that phenomenon constantly exist in weird ways to you? That, like, I've met a million celebrities in my years working at ESPN, and it was cool. But I crossed you on the street, I'm going to be talking to you for an hour and a half. That's just what it is.
Well, you and my mom still think I'm big time. Everybody else, has that's faded. But you brought up Road Rules. First of all, we didn't find a way to get on TV. They stalked me. Like, they wanted a country music singer. They did the first one in New York, and the reason they came up with the idea for a reality show was MTV was the coolest thing on the planet, right? Bigger than TikTok, bigger than YouTube. It dictated culture. I mean, it really, really, really did. As a matter of fact, the president of MTV back in the day was getting some criticism, and the interviewer was saying, come on now, don't you feel like there's some negative influence? Can't you tell you're influencing young people? And he said, whoa. We don't influence young people. We own them. We tell them what to listen to. We tell them what to wear. We tell them how to talk. And so they really did. I became a youth pastor, and I was trying to impress the teenagers I was mentoring and tell them, I used to be on MTV. They didn't think that was very cool anymore. So I'm like, no, it was big time. Like, it was.
Yeah. You got to be like a teen mother nowadays to be on MTV.
Oh, right. Or you got to be ridiculous to be on ridiculousness. But, MTV wanted to do a soap opera. What was happening was people were watching music videos, and they were watching for 3 or 4 minutes at a time, or, 2 videos, and then changing the channel when one came on they didn't like. And the network just said, hey, the sponsors are saying, we got to keep people on the channel for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. We got to make episodes of something. So they decided to make a soap opera. It's what they wanted to make. So they went and hired a soap opera producer, Mary Ellis Bunham,
Oh,
who was
wow.
in partnership with John Murray. And they said, yeah, well, here's what it would cost to do a soap opera. And MTV just said, well, we're cable TV, AKA we're cheap and we don't have the budget for that. So they said no and shelved it. And then John Murray and Mary Ellis Bunham came back and said, we think we have an idea for your soap opera. We're not going to hire big actors and actresses, and we're not going to have to do the big production it takes to do a scripted television show. We're going to do an unscripted reality show. And of course, everybody on the planet went, what's a reality show? We get all these diverse people. We give them to live in the house, and we do a lab rat experiment, and it's unscripted. And I did not see the New York season, but in 1992, they did it in New York with 7 strangers picked to live in a loft to find out what happens when people stop being polite and start being real. And is that me making all that noise? You hear that crackling?
It could be me. It could be me. I'm a walking technical difficulty.
Well,
But
I don't know if that's my headphones or if I'm making crackling, but I'm sorry. So in 1993, they decided, hey, 1992 worked real well. We liked it. Let's do another season. Nobody dreamed there'd be 40-something seasons of The Real World. But they had agreed to do a second one. And they said, but we're not going to do it in New York. We're going to do it in Los Angeles. And at that time, Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Travis Tritt, Vince Gill had blown up the music scene, not just the country music scene, but everybody had gone to buy cowboy hats and cowboy boots and went out line dancing. And so country music took over the world there for a few years in the early 90s. And MTV said, hey, bandwagon, we got to get a country guy. So they came to Nashville. And I was a freshman at college at Belmont University, 18 years old, just graduated high school. And I was dressed like this downtown Nashville. And we were at a television taping for NBC and all the big stars were singing. And I was just there watching. And the guy comes up to me and said, you a singer? I said, yeah, man, you're in Nashville. Everybody's a singer. How old are you? I said, man, I'm 18 years old. He was creeping me out a little bit. I was away from home. I'm like, he's like, yeah. You watch MTV? I'm like, I mean, I've seen it. Seen a show called The Real World? No. Yeah. So let me tell you about it. Tells me all about it. We think you'd be great for season 2. Would you fill out this application? I said, no, frankly, the show sounds dumb. He said, you're perfect. You're awesome. I'm like, why am I perfect? He said, well, you're stubborn and you don't want to be on the show. That's exactly what we need. Long story short, I was cast on season 2. And here's something most people don't know. They sent Tammy and Dominic. I think Tammy and Dominic and I are maybe the most memorable on our season. They sent Tammy from Ireland or Tammy from raised in New York, but living in Los Angeles. And Dominic raised in Ireland, living in Los Angeles.
A true party hero, Dominic.
They flew these 2 people to Nashville. They meet at the airport. They get in a Winnebago and drive to my house in Owensboro, Kentucky, 2 hours north. And then we drive to Los Angeles, the 3 of us. And that's where they got the idea for Road Rules.
That's why I remember the start of that season. I think there was the big, you may have called Tammy trash or something like those. There was one of those early
I may have definitely called her. Yeah. Actually, she said, something derogatory about my hometown,
For sure.
And I said something to her in the Winnebago. I'm just, hush, you just mad because we don't let trash like you in our town. You don't call somebody trash. And the big dramatic cut to the, the commercial. And I'm like, well,
so that's the Road Rules, almost like proof of concept right there in a lot of ways. I never even connected those dots.
It was the pilot. I mean, it was such great drama that they said, we got to make a whole Winnebago version of this. And they did. It's called Road Rules. And then they had the idea for Road Rules and Real World to compete on the challenge, which is still going on today, called the Challenge. But at first it was called the Road Rules Real World Challenge. But first, before that, it was actually called the Road Rules All-Stars, where there were no road rulers. It was one person from each real world. Eric Neese from season 1, myself from season 2, Rachel from San Francisco, season 3, who's now on Fox News, and Cynthia from the Miami show, and Sean Duffy, who was the new kid on the block from the Boston show. And I remember meeting Sean for the first time. We were getting off the train and he was meeting us and he recognized all of us. Of course, his show was just airing and we didn't know who he was, but he was wearing his lumberjack hat and he had the same backpack we had. So it's kind of obvious this was our guy. And I went up and I shook his hand. I said, hey, I'm John. He goes, yeah, I know. I'm Sean from the Boston show. I'm like, yeah, I don't watch it, but he looked over my shoulder and said, who is that? And I said, Oh, that's Rachel. Let me introduce you. They got
Oh,
married and have 9
they
kids.
got married.
They
Yes,
got
yes.
married and have 9 kids. He served in Congress, and they're both very Catholic and have 9 kids, and
That is a
wonderful, wonderful
showman's
friends.
right there. Well,
So I always say, I started the challenge, and I always say I started Road Rules, and really I started the Real World too, because season 1 sucked.
season 1, well, let me ask you about this because it didn't take long. If this was for American fans, the first real taste of reality TV, and it was just to try to explain how groundbreaking it was to people that
Yeah,
only know real world of today of like, let's get the craziest young partiers possible and see who will sleep with each other. That's kind of what it became quickly. But I
right.
give so much respect to the first 3 seasons in
Yeah,
particular because it really was a social experiment. I mean, in my
yeah,
small town, there wasn't a
right.
lot of diversity. You're suddenly in a position where you could be accidentally stepping on Tammy's toes in the Winnebago. We saw it all break down. Do
Yeah,
you look back and with pride now that you played such a key role? I know that they're casting certain characters based on how they perceive you,
yeah.
but back then it really was what would happen if a white guy, a gay guy, a black girl, a this, or that, Christian, a Muslim all got together. And
Mhm.
looking back, that's as groundbreaking as it gets.
It really is, and yes, I am proud of it. Especially, there was a guy named George Verschoor. There's still a guy named George Verschoor. He produced the first 4 seasons of The Real World: New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and London. London didn't have as good a ratings, but I'm not sure why. It was a great city to do it, and it was a great cast. But for whatever reason, had lower ratings. But he left after the first 4 seasons, and then the show really took a turn. You can notice a change. Someone your age, someone that really watched the show as much as you might have.
Oh, I had the
Y-
books, John. I got nerdy. I got the books for Christmas every year. Okay.
okay.
I was deep in.
Well,
All right.
you got more than we got. We didn't
Yeah.
get the books. We're in the books, but we didn't get them. But yeah, the show changed a lot. And reality TV changed a lot. I mean, I tell people all the time, hey, I was on the very first reality show ever. I was on season 2. I'm the 8th reality star on the planet because I was, the most likable and lovable on my season, of course. But the only 7 before us was the season 1 of The Real World. And then somebody not too long ago said, yeah, first reality show except for Cops and
There.
Star Search. And I went, oh no, hey, listen, never say that again, because here we've been just, really proud being, and Cops is definitely reality, unfortunately. But as far as living in a house together, like they do, the housewives, the Kardashians,
Oh yeah.
you talk. I remember when Cyrus from the Boston show, who's become a friend of mine, we were talking on the phone one day. He said, John, you're not going to believe what they're going to do. I said, well, first of all, who is they? He said, I don't know. One of the big networks. They're going to put people on an island, and whoever survives
Yes.
gets $1 million. And I'm like, well, we get like $4,000 just for, living with idiots.
Well, you
But
got 4 grand for 22 weeks in that house.
it was 22 weeks, 22 episodes, and we got about $4,300,
Yeah.
which
I don't know who
stings.
was negotiating those contracts in
Well,
hindsight.
it's the contract reads something like this. This is what you'll be paid, and we own it in perpetuity, which is a contract word, which means forever and ever till Jesus
Sure.
comes back, and then even past that. That was a word I learned because I didn't know. And you will be paid, X amount of dollars. And it was really, we're only paying you this because this is what SAG requires us to pay you. And so it was under $5,000 for 20. And so now, if you're a reality star, it's I came back to Nashville and I wanted a record deal. That's why I did The Real World. And Capitol Records signed me, but then they said, we don't know what we're going to do with you. You're an MTV star. You're a Christian, you're an MTV star, and now you want to be a country singer. I said, no, 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 no. I've been a country music singer for about 12 years. I was 18 at the time. Okay. I only was on this ridiculous MTV show so that I could get some popularity and some
Yeah,
fame so that.
you're the anti-star. You weren't there to
Right.
drink and sleep with people.
Right.
You were chilling on the couch. We were like, if I'm
Yeah.
going to be anybody in the real world, I'm going to be John with the cowboy hat. And then
Right.
that's like a scar. So that you're telling me that became a scarlet letter against your
Well, it
music
did because
opportunity.
I think so, because at the time nobody knew what a reality star was. And they're like, okay, how are we going to make a country music star out of an MTV star? And those
Yeah,
days, those lines were crossed. Now, Post Malone and Beyonce are the biggest country music stars that there are. Okay. But back in the early 90s, you didn't cross those lines. And, Dwight Yoakam made it out in Hollywood. He didn't make it in Nashville. So he was kind of an outcast in Nashville. Nashville's a
sure.
small little community and somewhat of a clique even. And I was perceived as this MTV star who now wanted to come to Nashville. I'm like, no, no, no. They found me 3 blocks away at Belmont. I'm from Kentucky, an hour north of here. You don't understand. Like, this is who I am. I just did this crazy thing. And they're like, we can't make the leap. We just don't know what to do. So they signed Trace Adkins and dropped me off the label. And I still can't listen to Honky Tonk Badonky Donk without crying a little bit. Every time it comes on, I just shed a tear because I'm like, that's my. But now it's like, Morgan Wallen, you were on The Voice. Come here, let us give you a record deal and pay you $1 billion. And so it's like things have changed. But I'm not bitter or regretful at all.
You don't seem it.
That's my sarcasm. That's my
just a little bit. You're saying just a little bit.
Well,
I mean, would you agree? I'm looking from the outside in, having kind of followed where you've been on and off since that show. I almost feel like you're going through like a real life redemption angle, because you're back podcasting in the reality space with Getting Real with John and Beth S from your same season in LA.
Yeah.
I see you putting out new music now after a long time away. Do you feel like you've kind of survived the storm that comes with reality TV, and now you're doing what you want on your terms?
Yes, on my terms is a good way to put it. I never really put all my hope in the reality thing. I mean, Beth is still on reality shows. She's been called back for the Challenge All Stars. And I'm like, hey, Beth, I started that show, right? And, my phone doesn't ring, but I know why my phone doesn't ring. I don't get on television and act like an idiot. And those people do. I'm going to go on record on your podcast as saying those people do. Okay. Watch the show. Do I really want on there? I mean, I want to win the money, but do I really want to hang out with those misfits and idiots? I mean, and I got to realize I was a misfit. That's why I was on The Real World. I thought I was this normal kid, but when I look back now, I'm seeing our, pictures of our cast, and I'm like, oh yeah, you look outrageous there with your cowboy boots and your cowboy hat. Like, I don't wear this to bed. Like, I don't wear this when I go out to eat. This is my, I'm going on stage as a country singer look you got right now. And, but it clicked for me one day. I'm like, hey, I'm just as outrageous to them as they are to the rest of the world. I thought I was the normal middle of the road one. I'm not middle of the road. I'm very unique, actually. And, I've accepted that. I mean, when The Real World and that fame and that country music quest kind of died out around 2000, I ended up going into ministry. I led music at churches in Kentucky, Alabama, Florida. I became a missionary in East Africa, baptized hundreds of people. And then I got, one thing that happened, my dad got cancer and was dying, and he's passed on 5 years ago. But and he's really the one that instilled the love for country music in me. And I said, you're upper 40s now. Are you done singing? Like, you done trying to be a country music singer? And I got mad in the shower one day, and I said, no, boy, you ain't done singing yet. Get back out there and try to sing country music some more, because you love it and you miss it. And I wrote a song called I Ain't Done Singing Yet. And it was my comeback song, and it did well on radio as far as independent new artists, which, I'm a new artist at late 40s. I've only been singing country music for 41 years, but I'm a new artist as far as, the industry's concerned. And now I'm back on my own terms. And my record label, where I'm sitting right now, said, you know what you ought to do, John? You ought to have a podcast. And I said, I just don't have any interest. They said, people be interested in hearing from you. And I thought, I don't know if they would. And my manager said, yeah, you get a podcast together. And I actually got invited to a conference here in Nashville called Rockin' Pod, which is a conference for podcasters that have a podcast about music. And they invited me as the MTV guy. I went and sang AC/DC song. And the guy pulls me aside that ran the whole thing. And he's like, hey, I work with Pantheon Media out in San Francisco. I'm like, awesome. Yeah, we help people like you start podcasts because you need one. Like you would be great at podcasting.
Well, would you say you kind of have like a radio voice naturally, being a singer?
I have a face for radio.
I wasn't going to go that far, JB, but
I mean, I want to sing country music, but on the radio. But I mean, I have done a lot of radio interviews. I'm good on the mic. I'm not shy. I talk a lot, as you can tell. And I just said, you know what? My roommate Beth has been telling me for 5 years, let's do a podcast together. I'd be like, no, Beth, we can stand each other in small doses. We can't do a podcast together. And then when everybody else said, do a podcast, we'll help you. I said, okay, well, I got to call Beth because I definitely can't do one without her. And we got a great podcast. It's really fun. As you know, podcasts are really fun to make.
It really is. It's just I mean, for the most part, you're right. We all put on a shtick or maybe turn it up a little bit, but it's the closest you
That's
can
right.
get to hanging out with Jon Brennan and Beth Stolarczyk and
Oh
interview, which
man,
I
you
think you
did
guys
good pronouncing that.
I did. Well, come on. I lived this life. This was my,
Yeah.
I mean, I got many people I could text Stolarczyk to, and they know what I'm
I'm
talking about.
I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
here's what you're interviewing a lot of great reality stars. I mean, I was
Yeah.
fired up to hear you interview Dom from your season 2. But like, what have you taken from that experience? Do you feel like, I mean, it's almost like putting you in the reality Hall of Fame, like this full circle where you're back at
Mhm.
playing John from the real world again, right? Where for
Yeah.
all those years you were the real Jon Brennan. And
Right, and that's the great thing about being a reality star is when people meet you or see you on the street, they're like, "I know you. You weren't playing a villain, you weren't playing a role, you weren't I really know you." And that's what people say. They say, "I thought it was you, but when I heard your voice, I knew it was you." And that's good. I mean, I get a lot of positive feedback because I was more likable than my roommate. Maybe not a lot. I guess some negative feedback,
well, a
but
little more than David at the time.
Lord have
Glenn
mercy.
was a little grumpy. You know
Well,
what I mean?
and he's
Yeah,
such a great dude now. I mean, 30 years of perspective. We're all like 50 now. So it's like, whatever. Glenn's amazing. David's, we love each other dearly. I mean, definitely we're just caricatures of our 20-year-old selves. So
sure.
we haven't changed a whole lot. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. We've had Montana on and Genesis and Cyrus from the Boston show.
Heck yeah.
And that's just total fun. Who else have we had? We had Eric Nice on from the
Nice.
first show. To me, he's the very first reality star ever. I mean, name a reality star before Eric. You can't. He is the very first OG reality star. We had Judd from the San Francisco show. We've had
Yes.
Puck, Notorious, the real life Beavis and Butthead, Puck,
I mean, he taught me how to eat like this,
with your
John.
fingers in the peanut butter.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
so gross. So gross. Shooter Jennings, who's the son of Waylon Jennings and Jesse Coulter, inboxed me on Instagram one day. He's like, "Hey man, I'm a fan. I wondered if you're going to be on these reunions or these All Stars." And I'm like, looking at his verified blue check. I'm like, "Hang on, is this Shooter Jennings?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I'm a big fan of you. Watched you growing up." I'm like, I was living in Alabama at the time. I said, "Dude, I'm coming to Nashville. We're going to hang out and be friends." He said, "Well, I don't live in Nashville anymore. I live in Los Angeles." I'm like, "Okay, well, probably never coming there." I said, "But dude, do you realize that I sing country music because my father loved your father's music so much?"
That's
And
awesome.
now they're both gone, and Shooter and I are friends, and he's a Grammy Award winning record producer. So then the phone rang and said, "John, we're going to do a reunion. We're going to put you guys in the same house, except it's not going to be on MTV. It's going to be on Paramount Plus." And I said, "What's Paramount Plus?" And anyway, we moved back into the same house for 3 weeks back 3 years ago, and did 8 episodes, 10 episodes, something for Paramount Plus, The Real World Homecoming. And I called Shooter and I said, "Hey, Shooter, I really don't want to fly with my guitar because they don't handle them well. They're not careful. Would you happen to have a guitar I can borrow?" Just he's like, "Yeah, man, come by and get it." And he gives me one of his dad's acoustic guitars to play on The Real World Homecoming. And it's just wild to think about, not just celebrities but all of the people that watch the show. Do you know Adam Rank? He's on the NFL Fantasy Football
Yes.
League.
Yes,
He's
I
a
do.
fan of the show. He's
Well,
actually going to come on our podcast and be a
I want to
guest
ask
because
you about the fans of this show because
yeah.
it could be the timing, the impact that MTV had, and certainly the impact that the day one ish of reality TV that you were a pioneer, a part of. But let's be also really honest here. MTV didn't replay your season once or twice. I
They
would
sure
say
didn't.
from 1993 to about
Yeah.
96 or 7, you were either seeing half nude girls on spring break or the Sabotage Beastie Boys video or replays of your season. I don't know, like 12 hours a day, John. So
Yeah.
what
So
does
what
that
they would do,
microwave cycle do to stardom? You were in everyone's life over.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy, and I'm the kid next door because my season really revolved around how's John going to respond to uh, you know, Tammy's abortion? How's John going to respond
Sure.
to living with Beth A, who was a lesbian? How's John going to respond to Volatile David? How's John going to respond to the girls kicking David out of the house for the blanket hallway incident? What's John going to do in Los Angeles? It was just like I was the main character of our show. And every time something controversial would happen in our interviews, that they split and they narrate the story, they always used me. And the producer just told me, John, because you don't hem and haw, you tell us what really happened in about 2 sentences, which we need for television, and you also don't lie, you tell us the truth. And so I was always the one that the camera was on for our season. Well, when my season came out, there was only New York and Los Angeles. They didn't have other seasons to show. Well, the Real World became hugely popular very quickly. And they showed our season. Of course, a new episode dropped they didn't drop. Back then it aired on MTV during prime time. But then on Saturdays, they would do a Real World marathon where they would show every episode back to back to back to back. And you turned on MTV on a Saturday, which every person on the planet did back in the 90s, right? And the 80s. You saw the Real World and you saw me, and I was all over television for most of the 90s. It was because MTV was you turned the TV on, you went to MTV. And when you did that on a Saturday in the 90s, chances are you saw the Real World Los Angeles. And as they made new seasons, sure, it got less and less. But for about 8 or 9 years in the 90s, it was really ridiculous.
It really was. I got so many questions about how you dealt with this journey. So
Yeah.
when you lose your record deal and maybe you start to wake up in the 90s and go, what I thought was going to happen, and what really was what we thought as viewers were going to happen. We thought you'd be the next Garth Brooks automatically from the MTV exposure. And
why
then
not?
The fact that you obviously could sing. You could, what was the song you always sang? Was it Brooks and
Boot,
Dunn?
Scoot, and Boogie.
Yeah. All I heard was the county line. And I'm like, that's John's song every single time.
Yeah. Well, I didn't write that song. And when I met Ronnie Dunn from Brooks and Dunn in Nashville in the mid 90s, he goes, you sang my song on MTV.
That's
I said,
awesome.
Yeah. He said, you did a great job. I said, thank you. I'm a big fan. He goes, yeah. You're not getting any royalties for that. And I said, oh, trust me. I know.
$4 grand. Yeah. But when you go into the ministry and you go back to living, I guess you could say a regular life. You're Jon Brennan from Owensboro, Kentucky, traveling around doing the Lord's work in so many ways, which I have so much respect for. Are you thinking one day I'm going to get back to this? Or is it like, God, whatever your plan is for my life, maybe that was a season. Maybe that was a fun season that I'll be telling people about for decades.
That's a fantastic question. And to be really honest, the music business had beat me up a little bit where I was discouraged. So I was kind of running from it, but always having the passion to still be pursuing it, but really had my tail between my legs. So the answer to that question is there were moments where I was all fired up in my truck and listening to country music going, I'm going to get back to that town and I'm going to do this thing. And then there were moments where I was really discouraged and I just was fearful to try because of further rejection. So the answer to that question is it took me 25 years to come full circle with that and just to go, dude, I'm all grown up. I'm a grown man. I'm 40 something years old. Like who's the people that were intimidating you in the music business aren't even alive or don't even work in the music business anymore. So you're not pursuing something that you love and you were born to do because of people that are not even a significant factor in the business anymore. And so, and I turn on award shows and you see people winning awards and singing on award shows that frankly don't sing as good as I do. And it's just discouraging. It's really discouraging. Those performances on award shows and you're like, wow, that's pitchy. They got people on Idol that sing better than this. And this person just won a Grammy Award or that person's obviously lip syncing. All they're doing is shaking their naked tush and they're a huge music star.
Sure.
And they have zero musical ability. It's frustrating. And so those are the moments you go, that does it. I'm going back. I'm going to take over the music business. But I mean, music business is very discouraging. And my manager tells me all the time, he said, John, if this was a talent contest, you would do really well. You might even win. You would place high. But the music business is not a talent competition. It's a business, and sometimes, really often, more often than not, it has very little to do with music. It has very little to do with talent.
It's a
And
dirty business. It's
it
a
is.
gross business in a lot of
It
ways.
is. It is. It's a tough one. And the consumer goes, "Well, this song made it because I like this song." And I want to say, well, you might like that song because they played it 12 times until you decided I'm forced to like this song. If you really chose the music that you liked, you'd be probably listening to a lot of underground indie artists that you've never heard of,
Sure.
because the best music out there is often not what's on the radio. But that's everything. That's movies, that's TV, that's in it. The whole entertainment scene is that way, and really, that's the way life is. I mean, I had a friend tell me something the other day. Said, "You know what I don't like about politics? It's just so darn political." And I'm like, "Well, number one, that's funny and it's ridiculous sounding, but everything on this planet is political and not necessarily fair and not necessarily right." And so, I watch reality TV and it irks me. I'm like, okay, first of all, that's that's not real, and you're not really acting um, with integrity right now, because you only said that because there was a camera pointed at you, and you only acted that way because you felt the need to act out because there was a camera pointed at you. And I've had that feeling. I know what you're doing. But those first 4 seasons of The Real World had a lot of integrity. It became so wildly popular that here came. I mean, Kim Kardashian used to watch us on TV. And, I've never met her, but she has said, I used to watch season 2 of The Real World, and that's what made me want to be on
That's
TV.
wild.
And so, when you have generations and legions of people that are watching reality TV going, I want to do that, and then they actually make a good audition tape and get on, then they act so outrageously, hamming it up, that you don't really know the real them, and you're not watching an authentic show anymore. It's like my mom watches all of these shows where people are like, "Well, honey, I think I like house number 2 because it has an office and a nice loft for a guest room." And they're sitting out by a lake at a picnic table talking about which house they're going to buy next. I'm like, "Mom, nobody talks like this." They get in the car and they go, "I like the first one. That's the one we're getting." Nobody sits in solid color pastel polo shirts
Sure.
at a picnic table by a lakeside and talks about the homes they visited that day.
Sipping wine too.
Yeah, it's just so fabricated. And so, to call it reality TV is funny. It's like we went back on The Homecoming 3 years ago into the same house with the same idiot, same people.
That is What does
And
that feel like? Because I took
well,
some pictures out in front of that house, and if people don't realize, I mean, it's
mhm,
steps from the beach, Venice,
yeah,
California, like, it's in the middle of everything down there. Was
yeah,
that strip, so to speak, the
yeah.
passageway, was it as crazy as it is now? Because 'Cause you'll find people, with tattoos on the face, do it on a unicycle. I mean, you'll see crazy things in there.
Those people with the tattoos on the face are now in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Shout out to them.
Yeah. In the 90s, you got to remember 1992. Of course, we had the George Floyd, debacle and fiasco and the riots. But in 1992, we had the Rodney King.
Rodney King, right, yeah.
And then the riots happened in LA because the policemen and the verdict. And so we're there the year after the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. So Venice Beach, not the safest area of Los Angeles. We're literally steps away from the sand, and that's why they're like, "John, you need to get a job and go buy a car." I'm like, "I just graduated high school. I'm chilling on the beach. Thank you." They filmed White Man Can't Jump at that basketball court right there. I'm gonna go walk down there and shoot some hoops because I'm from Kentucky. And they're like, "Yeah, about that. You can't really walk down the beach by yourself, so we're going with you." I'm like, "With the camera crew? Are you really? That won't make a scene at all." And so, it was just Los Angeles in 1993 was different than it is now, obviously, and Venice Beach was different, but it was gang central, to be honest. When it got dark at Venice Beach, we actually had a security guard with us that said, "Hey, I'm nervous. We're going home."
Wow.
Yeah, it was gang territory, and now it's homeless territory on Venice Beach.
Sure.
But still, it's my stomping ground. I walked the Venice Boardwalk every day. All my roommates lived in Los Angeles. They had cars, jobs, and other apartments to go and escape to. I was trapped in that house, and I walked the Boardwalk Beach every day. They're like, "John, you need to, go out in Los Angeles." I said, "What do you want me to do? Ride a bus? What do you expect when you drop the Kentucky kid here in Los Angeles? I'm chilling on the beach. Thank you."
And if you weren't
And
there, you were on the couch, you were in the
yeah,
hot tub with the rubber duck. I mean, you were living the chill life.
yes,
I think I would have done the same
chilling,
thing. I probably would have
chilling.
accidentally pissed more people off. How do you stay friends this long with Beth Stolarczyk, who was always such a fun character, but you guys would be like brother sister, but
Yeah,
then like real brother sister and seemingly hate each other. And then we'd
yeah,
see you on reunion shows, we'd see you on the
yep.
challenge. Now you're saying you do a podcast together and you're roommates, which is awesome.
Mhm.
How has that friendship evolved over so many decades?
She has two really beautiful teenage children, and we dropped out of contact for a while. As a matter of fact, I didn't have a cell phone until 1998. Okay, and then when I did, it was not a smartphone. Okay, it was
Yeah.
the Motorola,
It
and
was the Zach
so
Morris, the big brick with
I
the
didn't
with
have that. That was for rich people. But when they made them, 25, you had 25 minutes per month, and so you'd talk for 59 seconds and then hang up. Remember those days?
oh
And
yeah, oh yeah.
yeah, because you won't be charged for 2 minutes when you talked for a minute and 2 seconds. And then I didn't get a Facebook until 2007. So there were some years where I dropped out of touch. It was maybe a phone call once a year, but social media and texting not only helps the rest of the world stay in touch, but it helps reality stars reconnect. And
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, we stay in touch, and there are weeks I talk to Beth every day. I talk to Irene pretty often on text, social media. A couple times a year, I send a text to Tammy, Dominic. It's so funny because if you listen to our podcast, it was our 50th episode. We wanted a big guest, and so we asked Tammy to come on. She said, "Well, I really not available because she has a lot of irons in the fire right now." So we asked Dominic, and we had got to talking about Tammy on that episode. And he goes, "So, well, have you had her on the podcast?" And I said, "Well, funny you should ask. We actually," he goes, "Oh, I get it. You asked her first to be on this 50th episode." I said, "Yeah, kind of." And then at the end of the episode, where I'm like, he said, "John, when you call me, I see your area code pop up, and I know it's you, and so it's always nice to hear from you." I said, "Dom, save my number. My area code won't pop up if you save my number with my name." He goes, "Yeah, I haven't done that yet." So it's so funny that he doesn't have my number in his phone, but he does
Well,
it
I mean,
answer me all the
I'm a
time.
couple years younger than you, but we are the last generation. I remember when I started college without a cell phone and without the internet, and it was
Yeah.
probably the last incoming class that could ever claim that.
I remember watching the Miami season of The Real World, and I think it was Cynthia sitting at a computer checking her email, and I remember going, "What is she doing? We didn't have a computer. What's email? I don't have an email address." And then I got an AOL email and dial up, ding, dong, ding, dong, and I'm watching this happen on seasons of The Real World that came after us. Well, they have pagers. Well, they have email and a computer in the house. They took our television out of the house. You want to know why? So glad you asked, because I was watching The Real World season one. I had never seen the dumb show I was on, and so we started watching The Real World season one while we're filming The Real World season
That's
two.
wild.
And they're like, "You guys can't watch this." I'm like, "Why not? We're on it." And they're like, "We don't want you guys to become, leery and apprehensive about things. We just want watching this might make you clam up." And we're like, "Well, it's a pretty good show. We're enjoying it." They took it
Watching
out.
Julie and Kevin debate race could have made you camera shy afterwards.
Well, let me tell you something. I've known Kevin for 33 years, and the only thing I know about him is that he likes to argue about race. It's his most favorite, only thing to do. And a lot of those season one, except for Norman, and Norman's been on our podcast twice, but except for Norman and Eric, they've blackballed me because they think, John's a conservative and we don't talk to him anymore. And I think, wait a second, weren't you the groundbreaking people that were supposed to be diverse and tolerant of people
Fair
with
point.
different? You guys should be the most accepting group of people on the planet, but no, you shun people that aren't like you. That's curious.
How much do you get caught up on living in hindsight? Like, what would you say if I asked you if you never say yes to that TV scout looking for you at
Yeah.
Belmont University because they need the country music conservative cowboy? What happens to your music career from then until now? How much do you get caught in that cycle of what could have
Yeah.
been?
I mean, The Real World ended up being a great experience for me, and I like being that guy. I wouldn't be here talking to you right now And I like sitting here talking to you. It's a positive thing for me. All of my roommates don't have that. It wasn't a positive experience. The feedback, the backlash wasn't. But had I never done the real world and I stayed in Nashville and just kept plugging as a new artist, maybe I would have gotten a chance. And then that stigma of, well, you're a reality star, we don't know what to do with that, wouldn't have happened, and I might have hit it big, or I might have drifted off into obscurity and never been heard from ever. And
Sure.
so, I don't really play that game. I, I I don't know if I believe in fate, but I believe in God, and I think that I certainly didn't seek out to be on the real world. I think the Lord put me there. If you want to be really honest with you, and I trust Him, and opportunities that come, I usually take them because it's kind of like, well, number one, how could this hurt me? And number two, what if I don't do this? This is such a crazy thing to be asked to do. And, I was 18, and I was a country singer from Kentucky, and I didn't really like rap music, and I really didn't like all the messages that were on MTV, but I watched MTV growing up in the 80s. And, my favorite video was, you know, Walk This Way with Run DMC and
Oh
Aerosmith,
yeah.
and Phil Collins, and I Want My MTV, and Take On Me by Aha. That,
Oh yeah.
really creative video. And, you think back about MTV News and Rock the Vote, and Kennedy, who was on Alternative Nation. You think of all of these MTV person, Kurt Loder with MTV News, and you grew up with that, and so you want to put me on MTV? I don't fit any of the things that you guys try to do on the network. Yes, I'll go. Yes, I'll go. Are you kidding me? And there was a fear of, are they going to edit this and make me look really unlikable and stupid? And they could have. They could edit any of us. You could edit this podcast and make me look like a
Sure.
buffoon, but I'm doing a good job looking like one on my own, so you won't have to do that.
Well, you
But
also like you stood on your beliefs. You didn't that. Ultimately you were yourself. So there's no there you don't cringe, I'm sure, when you do run into the old video outside of maybe, your hair or your shirt or whatever
yeah,
style
there
change.
are there are cringe moments, and it is, you're wearing stripes with plaid today, really? Uh, or, hey, dude, you try Clearasil. Like, your complexion's horrible. You're on TV, and hey, mullets went out in the '80s, and you still got one in the early
Oh, they're
'90s on.
back in a big way,
They're
John, now.
back, but when I had one, I had hung on a little too long to my mullet, but I like it, and I should have it. If I could grow hair on top of my head anymore, I would have a mullet again. But
So the cowboy hat is iconic and functional.
yes, yes, yes. It's yeah, I'm a little thin on top there now,
There you go. There
but
you go.
most country singers that wear cowboy hats are. But I have moments at the reunion when they played the old clips, and we were supposed to rehash them, and David pulled the blanket off of Tammy in the hallway, and then everyone was laughing, but it ended up being this really huge deal, right?
For sure.
Well, I got down on the floor and gave the 1, 2, 3 count like the WWE.
Right.
That's cringy. Like, why would you do you not realize what's happening here? And so, there are a lot of things that you say, wish you hadn't have said that. Wish you hadn't have done that. And the thing you can get caught up into on a reality show is, hey, yesterday I had a conversation with Beth, and I didn't really feel like I looked that good during the conversation. So today I'm going to compensate for that, and I'm going to be on good behavior. And you can drive yourself crazy. And that's why I can really watch reality shows today and go, that's not authentic. That's not authentic. You wouldn't,
Sure.
you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't say that. You're saying that for the record. You're saying that because you realize you looked like an idiot yesterday. And, there was a point where we just said, hey, no one's going to watch this anyway. This is a crazy idea of a show. And so just be yourself and just trust the process. And, eventually you do. Eventually you do. And then, when we were done rapping, you start thinking about everything that unfolded, and you go, oh my goodness, they can't air this. This will ruin me.
None of it
So,
has, luckily, John. You're still here today. I mean, you're still getting opportunities from this experience in your life. So at some point, you have to embrace it, I assume.
You do. I mean, I'll be really honest with you. It's hard seeing reality stars today make the bank. I drive Uber for a living. When you're a country music singer that doesn't have a hit record, you're not making any money. And everybody in the world loves Spotify and Apple Music, but the artists don't. We went from selling CDs and making a little bit of money to not making anything. Back in the 90s, when you sold 1 million CDs, you made $1 million. That was about the
Sure.
cut for an artist. Now, if you get 1 million streams on Spotify, you make $4,000.
Well, same price as season 2 of the world, it seems. But
Seems like everything I've done makes pennies, and so people
well,
get in my
I'm glad that you're like, yeah, man, I drive for Uber because
yeah.
I was like building this arc to become this next boxing announcer, and I still believe in my career paths. But when Showtime Sports went out of business over the winter and it sort of derailed my career for a moment, I was like, I could sit here and wait for the phone to ring,
Right.
or I can get out there and grab a DoorDash bag and help my
Right.
community and start delivering. And people on this, the audience of this podcast had a lot of fun with it, and I get
Yeah.
it. But how much do you like that? Being a people person, getting out there,
Well,
you got to make money somewhere. Why don't you
yeah.
get out there and be yourself again?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather drive around Nashville in my truck and meet and talk to people and then wait tables because that's hard work, or go
Sure.
sit in a cubicle and have a 9 to 5 job. I'm not a 9 to 5 person. I drive Uber at night, and people get in there like, you're the guy from the real world. Oh my gosh! Or I have a little card in the back, and it has my music and my socials where you can follow me, and they're like, oh, what's this? Are you a singer? I'm like, yeah, give me a follow on Spotify because I need 1 million to get a record deal, and I've got 100. So no pressure, but I need you. And they're like, you look like the guy from the real world. I'm like, why, yes, I am. Or it'll come up in conversation. Yeah, so I'm a singer, but I'm really known for this other thing I did. And they're like, oh, never saw it.
Let me close with this. It's been so great to pick your brain, John. I really appreciate how generous you are with your time and retelling such an incredible story. And it's so great to see you on the podcast, back singing again. When you play live, I want to ask you, because when I go back and watch the first couple episodes of your season and they show you in your hometown, I think it was Goldie's, right? Playing at Goldie's, and you look like you
Good
were ready
memory.
to sing at the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, you look,
Yeah.
even back at age 18,
Yeah.
that you knew stage presence, you had confidence, you
Yeah.
believed in your craft. How has that changed when you get on stage now after
No,
everything?
it hasn't changed. I was born to be on stage singing country music. I mean, I've done a lot of singing in church over the years, and that's a whole different side of music for me. That's not performing country music. When you lead music in church, the focus is worship,
Sure.
and so it's not you, and that's a whole different thing. But I had the chance. I had an Opry star legend, John Conley, who, if you know old school country music, then you know John Conley. I remade one of his songs, and I had actually opened for him in my hometown, Owensboro, Kentucky, but he had forgotten that. But when you open for somebody, they really don't see your show; they're getting ready for their show. And Anyway, somebody played him my version of my song, and he said, "Oh yeah, I like this guy." And they said, "Well, he's dying to sing this on the Grand Ole Opry with you." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you tell him to come." This was a Tuesday. He said, "You tell him to come this Friday. I'm singing Friday, and he can come out and sing this with me." Well, that's
No way.
ultimate. So John Conley does a couple songs, and he says, "Hey, y'all make welcome Jon Brennan." And so they do. They give me a little golf clap, and John Conley didn't know who I was. He was really kind to me, and he was nice to me, and knew I was a singer, and I was from Kentucky. He's from Kentucky, but that's all he knew. And I said, "Hey, you think they'll let me stand in that circle there that they took from the old school Ryman Auditorium?" He goes, "I'll tell you what, you just stand there. I'll step out of the circle and you stand there," because that's where all the legends have sang, right? So that circle's kind of holy ground for a country singer. And he said, "Hey, John, before we sing this song together, tell everybody who you are, because I don't think they know." And what he really meant is, because I don't really know, and I don't want to blow this introduction. And
Well,
I
sir,
said,
I drive Uber. Yeah.
yeah. I said, well, before there was the Kardashians and Survivor on television, there was me on MTV's The Real World. And you could just hear the chatter across the Opera House. They're like, oh my gosh, that's the kid. That's John. That's the guy from The Real World. It's on my YouTube channel. You should go watch that performance, because it was just a thrill. So I got to sing on the Grand Ole Opry, and when I walked off the stage with my hand up in the air, my fist up in the air, and my manager was standing on the side, who's the head of my record label here in Nashville, CDX Records, and Joe Kelly. He said, you weren't nervous. You were amazing. You killed it. I'm like, well, I wasn't nervous. Uh, I have a lot of confidence on stage, and I'm having a blast, even if no one else is. And I've waited 35 years to sing on that stage. I wasn't nervous. I couldn't wait. And I look forward to more opportunities to do that. But I'm a very confident person on stage, and it's like riding a bike. It's second nature to me. And I being on a reality show is not second nature. It's like third, fourth nature. We went bowling on our homecoming, and it was weird because there was a cameraman standing in the bowling alley next to us while we're bowling. And I remember just looking at him going, this doesn't seem weird. It's weird that this doesn't seem weird, because you just bounced right back into that. But I enjoy my life. I've had so many great experiences. Reality TV has been a positive one. Music, I've had the ups and downs. I'm glad I didn't make it easily in the record business. I still haven't made it, but I'm on that journey because I've enjoyed the journey. I've enjoyed the journey, and had I made it really big right after the Real World, I would probably be done now. To be honest, all of the 90s singers are at home watching reality TV.
Right.
And so, I'm at this season where I've had, 25 years of ministry that I did, and wouldn't wanted to miss that for the world. And here I am. Yeah, some people know me, some people don't, some people forgot about me, some people haven't. It just doesn't matter. I'm just myself, and I'm all over social media. Follow me at jonbrennan.com. I'm on YouTube. I'm on all the stuff, and the podcast Getting Real, Getting Real with Jon and Beth.
It's a wonderful podcast, by the
Well,
way.
I'm
I
so glad
encourage
you like
people
it.
to check it out.
Need to
And
have
Jon,
you
I
on.
want to close with this. Like, you did this all being you. You didn't compromise your morals, your beliefs, your confidence in yourself. Yeah, life took you on some different turns, but to use a reality show term, you're a survivor. You're a
Yeah,
survivor of a business that chews people out and leaves them with regret, and you're
it
still
does.
doing what you love and connecting with people today. To me, that's a full circle success story because you did it the
Well,
right way.
man, that's a kind thing to say. I do feel that way. I do feel that way. Not everybody I was on TV with feels that way, and not every reality star has. I know a lot of reality stars from the real world, different seasons that we asked to come on our podcast, and they're like, that's a chapter of my life
I'm
that's
done.
I
Yep,
don't
I'm
I
done
don't
with that.
want anymore. And I don't beg them. I'm like, hey, it's cool. Here's my number. If you ever need me, come to Nashville, hang out. And I understand. I understand, and I don't badger them. It's
Appreciate
it's a
that,
it's a
Jon.
it's a whole thing.
This was awesome. Thank you so much. I hope people check out your podcast, Getting Real with Jon and Beth. Great stuff, and continue to follow your music at Jon Brennan everywhere, right?
At
Jon
at John, yeah, Jon at Jon Brennan. They don't let me do .com on Instagram, so it's _com, but I'm verified on everything but TikTok. And just whatever. Connect with me if you like to, and follow me on Spotify. I'm getting ready to put out an incredible new song called Tell Me That There Ain't a God. Tim McGraw had it on hold, decided not to record it. It's
No
coming
way.
out right around the holidays, just after the first year. And man, love to have you on our podcast.
Would love it. Would love
Yeah,
it. I mean, come on, you're
fantastic.
kidding me right here. This is great. Great chatting with you so much. Everybody check it out. Jon Brennan, a class act.